All right, we are live with Coach Mandi Balduf. She's going to be telling us about some college softball recruiting information, give us some insight on her journey into the game, and just kind of see if she can give you guys some tips and advice on how to navigate this recruiting process. Because if you're like me, when you came through high school, I didn't really have a lot of help. I had to kind of figure things out on my own, and not saying I made exactly the right choices along the way, but I ended up at a small Division II school because one of my buddies was going to school there, and I showed up to the baseball meeting at the beginning of the year, and that's kind of how I landed where I was.
Yeah, times have definitely changed, haven't they?
Yeah, for sure. For those of you who may not know, Coach Balduf actually coached my sister in college, and that's kind of how we crossed paths. So I know my sister thinks a lot about her, and she's helped her throughout her career, and I appreciate Coach Balda for everything she did for her, and I think she can help you guys out with the information and knowledge that she's gained through her journey in the game.
That's right, dude. It's been like 12 years. Amber played for me for 3 years at Shawan. So, yeah, we have a past that goes back quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
No doubt. Yeah. So, I mean, recruiting, I mean, we could sit here and talk for hours about recruiting. I mean, this is a conversation that, can't really happen in 45 minutes. And sometimes, recruiting for these kids and families it's clear as mud. You know what I mean? Like, people say one thing and then you find out another. And so it's just, for me, it's really important in giving back to these kids and families and making sure that they have the right information in hand. I mean, everybody, you and I both, our recruitment was very different back then. Times have definitely changed with technology and just everything that's available out there. But, for me, I don't know if a lot of your viewers, you gave a little bit of a bio, but I do go back for quite a bit in softball. I played college ball myself at a small NAIA school in Tiffin, Ohio. They're Division II now. And then I went on to have a 15-year coaching career. I've coached at the Division I level, the Division II level, and the NAIA level. So I've been scouting with National Scouting Report for about 4.5 years now. I got out of coaching and went right to the scouting side of things. So this is what I do all the time. This is what I take care of my families. I take care of my kids and just really educate people. I have a pretty good following on social media and I give a lot of information and I'm pretty blunt about things. that hasn't changed. That hasn't changed, but
what's your social media so I can put it up here so people can follow you to get some information?
Yeah, I've got Instagram. It's usually going to be Mandi Balduf NSR. It's typically, I think, what they are. I could text you that over here in a second. But I have Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I know we have a TikTok channel. One of our other scouts out of Alabama, she has a TikTok channel. So I think that's under NSR Softball. You can find that there. But yeah, tonight, recruiting. I mean, where do you want to start? Like, again, this could go a lot of different ways. And I think for me, Coach, I think the first question I always get in this process is when is a good time to get started? That's usually the first question I get is when should we start? And for me, guys, it's always going to be about when the prospect is ready, right? When they're ready for this process. Because I have a lot of kids and a lot of kids that are physically gifted and they might even be academically gifted, but they're just not ready mature-wise to handle the recruiting process. I mean, there's a lot to deal with. It's not just, showing up at a baseball field or softball field. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. So, if the kid's ready, because Coach, I mean, at the end of the day, like you and I both know, it's a proactive process with these kids, and they're the ones that have to do the work, right? So that's the first big question I get is, when should we start? And I say as soon as the kid's ready. That could be 7th grade, 8th grade, freshman year. I mean, that could take as long as maybe junior year. And as you get into, the longer you kind of wait in this process, the less options there are out there. So as long as, the kid's ready. I don't have a lot of 7th and 8th graders. I have 4 2026s and a 2027. I only have 4 of those. So a lot of the evaluation process, I think, for softball starts in that 8th grade to freshman year. when that kid decides, okay, I'm committed, I'm invested in this process, right?
Yeah,
So
I think it's important that you know, the athlete has to decide, is this something I want to pursue beyond, just my travel ball season or beyond my high school career? Is this something I want to dedicate, you know, my time to doing when I go to college? Because it's going to be full time athletics and full time academics.
that's absolutely right. And you get a lot of kids that are interested in the process, but they're not invested yet. And you've got to be invested because it is a proactive process. I think a lot of kids and families think it's something that's reactive, right? And so let's talk about some myths and truths that are out there about the recruiting process. I think the first big one, I hear it all the time. I know you see it across forums, on social media, but everybody says, oh, if you're good enough, they'll find you. Dude,
Yeah.
there's a lot of good enough kids out there, right? Like,
Yep.
this stems from, listen, guys, you're going to have a lot of people that are well-intentioned, trying to give you well-intentioned advice, but maybe misguided or uneducated, right? So I think it stems from that, a lot of these myths. Like, if you're good enough, somebody's going to find you. Dude, there's thousands of kids playing in one time slot, in one weekend, in one city, in one tournament, right? Like, there's thousands of kids out there that are good enough, and the statistics are out there. It's less than 10% of kids will go on to play any sport, right? And really, coach, like, any of these myths could be across any sport and across any division. So this isn't just softball related. This is football. This is basketball. And that first one of, I see it all the time. I see a lot of kids that are good enough that have missed the boat somewhere in the process, that it's a reactive thinking, right? We've already said how proactive this process is. And if you think you're just good enough and you're just going to show up at a field and somebody's going to find you, that's not the way recruiting works these days. There's just too many
Yeah,
kids.
you're just flipping coins.
Yeah. Right. So, I mean, being good enough, man, that's not what it takes anymore. There's a lot that happens behind the scenes. And I think a lot of people, again, have this reactive mindset to recruiting, that I'll just go play and coaches are going to find me. I'm just going to post some random video on YouTube or Twitter and a coach is going to offer me. Or my favorite is just go to camps. Well, what if those aren't recruitable options? So it's a lot of misinformation. It's well-intentioned advice, but it's just misguided and uneducated, really. So that's the first myth, is if you're good enough, somebody's going to find you, right? The second one for me is the academic piece. I mean, this softball is not a full ride athletic type of opportunity scholarship wise. The academic piece of this is going to be where a lot of the money is, right? That's your return on investment, folks, is in the academic side of this. Coaches want to recruit smart players. They got to make sure that they're eligible. But obviously, higher test scores, the more academic money that's available to those kids. So again, I mean, for me, like, I want a kid that's good enough to play at the next level, but they got to understand, like, you're a student athlete, right? Not an athletic student. So there has to be that piece, that academics, come first. That, oh, if we're just good enough, somebody's going to, A, find us, but B, they're just going to offer us all this money. Well, not if you don't pull the grades. As a college coach, think about it. I'm trying to get the most by giving the least, right? Meaning, coach, like, if you've got a high academic, you have a high ACT, I don't have to give you as much out of my athletic money to get you to come play for me, right?
Without a doubt.
But a lot of families, they want to do the least and want the most. It doesn't always, equal out. So again, the more, the higher the test scores and the better the grades, the more opportunities that open up, Division III, and there's just a whole lot more that opens up as far as, fishing in the right pond, so to speak, that happen when the academic side is focused on. So I think that is a myth out there, that if I'm good enough, I'm physically out, I'm going to find somewhere, and that grades don't matter. And then the last myth is always is the one, it's waiting. And coach, I don't know how many times I hear people say, well, I'll wait till I have my ACT score to start this process. Coaches aren't waiting. They didn't wait through COVID. Coaches aren't waiting in this process. For softball, that evaluation happens early. 8th grade, freshman year, those coaches know who they're going to talk with by that junior year date, right?
So they got names on the board.
Oh, for sure. I mean, people think, well, if a coach can't talk to me until June 15th, for Division II, or September 1st for Division I, if they can't talk to me, well, that doesn't mean they don't want to hear from you, right? We can't wait, for things to happen and then we're going to get into it. Again, it's a very reactive mindset, and recruiting is proactive. It's putting yourself out there. It's doing things that are going to make things happen, right? And again, I think that goes back to invested versus, interested in this process. So I think those are some good myths and truths to present, but it all really, for me, it always stems back from just some people just being misguided and uneducated, and they see things happening on social media and they think that that's how it's done. But anyways,
I can say from a college coach's standpoint, you mentioned on athletics, if I'm recruiting a high school kid and you're struggling to balance being a student athlete in high school, when I would say the hourly demand is not as rigorous as it is in college, then I don't know if I can depend on you to balance that workload at the next level when your professors are not going to, babysit you through the course necessarily. You're going to have to be responsible to manage your time, make sure you're going to class. You're going to do more work outside of class than you're going to do in class, and plus balance the athletic commitment that you have with, study hall, weightlifting, practices, the travel. It takes a lot of self-discipline. And if you're barely getting by in high school, I don't know if your work ethic and your commitment is going to make it when you get to the college level, and you're a gamble and you're a risk.
No, I mean, that is absolutely spot on. I mean, I don't want a kid that just kind of is interested in my school. I want a kid that's invested in the whole process. And, if you don't cut it in the classroom, you're not going to play or even be eligible for them. So you're right. Like, man, I hear it all the time. These high school kids tell me, Coach, I'm sorry, I've just been really busy. Man, Coach, that's one of my, I don't want to hear that ever, because you make time for what's important for you, you guys.
Yep.
Like, you've got time to TikTok and Snapchat and do all this stuff. You've got time to be invested in your recruitment. I promise you, no lie, it takes nothing more than 30 minutes a week if you put in the time to do the things behind the scenes that go about getting you recruited. But I mean, the academic piece, man, if you can't cut it now and you can't prioritize and time manage, you're going to struggle at the next level, because it's not just playing softball. It's like, what do you think? I would say playing college softball was like 20% of what I did. There's so much more going on than just playing college ball. I mean, I didn't major in college softball. That's not what I was there to do. I'm there to get an education. I'm there to get a degree that's going to mean something, 40 years down the road. It's not just playing college softball.
Exactly. And you mentioned, starting the process. How early is, the college recruitment starting on the softball side, as far as, I know on the baseball side, we're getting these verbal commitments as early as 8th grade. Kids haven't even played a varsity in high school yet, and we're getting verbal commitments to Power 5 schools. On the baseball side of things, is that starting to dwindle into the softball world as well?
Well, we took care of that a couple years ago when the Division I switched over their rules to pushing that back. I mean, nobody can offer or commit a kid until that September 1st date. But don't think for a second that they're not out evaluating. I can promise you, I've talked to numerous coaches this past week at the convention talking about what are your 24s and 25s. So you're talking sophomores and freshmen who are starting to be evaluated, and these coaches want to see them develop over the next couple of years. And really, Brandon, at the end of the day, it comes down to developing a relationship. That's really what the recruiting process is. And again, I mean, when should it start? When the kid's ready. Again, I've had kids that were 8th graders who, this 2022 class, I had a lot of 8th graders to start. And it took them 3 to 4 years through this process to manage that process through it, right? So they started in 8th grade, and it took them that long to find their fit. Now, some kids, again, are going to be physically ready, but maybe not academically ready. You're going to limit the ponds we can go to fishing if we don't have the right grades and test scores. But for softball, it really, around freshman, 8th grade year, and again, dude, when I'm talking about getting into the process, we're just getting toes wet at this point. Like, I have not thrown them into the deep end. We're just managing this process and meeting each kid where they're at, right? So you're just dipping in their toes in the pool and then getting them into the shallow end, and then we can go ahead and get into the deep end and then dive off the diving board. So these kids aren't just thrown in. This is a process that takes some time. And the earlier you can understand that, and the earlier you know that there's going to be some bumps in the road and you're able to pivot and stay positive, I think the earlier that's done, the better for a kid. So I don't think there's an ever too early, and obviously there is a too late. But as far as being too early, I don't think that there's such a thing as long as the kid's ready. Because it doesn't matter if you or I are helping a kid. It's not my process. It's not your process, right? It's not mom and dad's process. They're not the ones that are going to be writing the emails and talking to these coaches. It's the player. So she has to, or he has to be ready to manage that process, to manage the relationships, right?
Yeah, a lot of players, they don't know how to get started. Like you mentioned, the emails need to come from the players. I think that's important, that mom and dad don't need to send the email from mom and dad's email address. Like if you're interested in a school, it should be a personalized email from the student athlete. And, mom and dad might help edit the writing and stuff like that, but that's just for grammatical errors and things like that. Like, you genuinely need to write as a student and address the coach that you're interested in talking to.
It's funny that you say that, but do you know how many of these kids don't even know really how to write an email?
Exactly. I teach them every day.
Every day. I'm shocked that we have kids that we're about to put in the real world that literally don't know how to send an email. It's super archaic for them. So for me, I had to take a step back and really, again, meet each kid where they're at. And it's as simple as we can tell them to write emails, but coach, we got to help them. First of all, make sure we're targeting the right schools to email, right? Athletically and academically, that has to make sure we're fishing in the right pond to begin with. So we got to make sure they're emailing the right coaches, but we got to teach them how to write. Rule number 1 in email, have a professional email. Like, sexy kitten softball is not appropriate. Right? It's some of these, there's just, certain emails are just not appropriate. So that basic, have a good email. Something else I'd love to see in emails is create a signature. In the settings of every email, you can create a signature so that there's always certain things that are in that email, and you don't have to worry about a signature line. Have a subject line, guys. I mean, keep it simple. Have a subject line, have a brief email, and then have a signature. And to me, an email is so basic, but to these kids, they'd rather, they just don't see it the same way that you and I do, and they don't really use email all that often. Right? So we've got to teach them some basic stuff, write your emails, but okay, that's helpful until I don't know who to email and I don't know what to say. I had a kid email me one time, no lie, no subject line, no signature.
Subject.
Oh yeah, that's a good one too, right? But the body of the email, coach, all it said was, "Hey, we play this weekend, hope we win."
Wow.
I have no idea who the kid was, what team, what tournament. I didn't know anything, but she sent her emails, right? So we've got to teach them some basic stuff. But that's really part of the first step of the process. The recruiting process is a series of steps, and that first one, coach, is being identified and recognized by coaches who have a need for you. That's step 1 of this process. You have to know. You have to be checked off for that coach on their checklist. Meaning, if I'm recruiting that grad year, do I need your position? Do you have the metrics I'm looking for? Do you have the academic piece that I'm looking for? Are you the right character kid? All of those are a checklist in that first step, being identified and recognized. I don't care how much you love, ABC University. If ABC University doesn't need a power hitting outfielder because they're only looking for a pitcher in that class, that will go no further in the recruiting process. Right? I think you follow me enough to know in this first step, this is when I talk about fishing in the right pond. Right? Too many kids want to throw a lot of fishing lines, 30 emails and 30 videos and 30 camps.
Yeah, let me mass email every D1 school and hope I get a response.
Right? Like, that's not the way to do it. And statistically speaking, that's just not where kids are going to fit. Less than 2% of kids are going to play at the Division I level. That's just statistically speaking. Right? So we've got to know, I don't have the right bait for this body of water. I don't even have the right vessel. I need a boat. My Walmart Snoopy pool isn't going to catch marlin. It's just not. And that, that's okay. Because you and I both know Walmart Snoopy pool can catch fish. It just isn't going to be in that pond. So as long as you start out in the first step of the process, targeting the right schools, targeting the right level athletically and academically, right? So that's what starts the process, is when a coach says, yeah, that's a kid that I need and she fits what I'm looking for. And this all starts with the emails, right? This all starts with putting your name out there proactively. And dude, it's not just one email. I get frustrated with this because a lot of kids want to send one email and they want to be like, oh, I sent my email, a couple months ago. Well, let's do a little math problem. Okay. As a college coach, head coach, I would get, 100 emails a day. There's 30 days in a month. Okay. That's 3,000 emails. Right. And that's on the low end. So let's just double and go, okay, I got 200 emails. That's 6,000 emails and you sent one. Right. It's the consistency. It's the monotonous of putting yourself out there proactively. And it can't be the same email every time. It's gotta evolve. It's gotta show something. Right. So that's first and foremost in the process, is you have to be identified by a list of schools that want you, not your list. Every kid has a wish list. I get that. But the list of schools and coaches who actually need you, those lists might not ever overlap. And that's what's important, is that kids are open-minded about the different opportunities that are out there. If you focus on the D1 pond this entire time, you're going to miss out on options in Division III and NAI and D2 schools where you actually do fit. And the coach had no idea who you were. Right? This first step, coach, if I don't know you exist, how do I recruit you? Right?
Exactly. That's And how do you find these email addresses? Every school has a staff directory. Just go to the college athletics website, find who you need to talk to. Most of these schools have a recruiting coordinator. Email the whole staff if you need to, but you need to introduce yourself to each person. The information is available on how to get their email address. You can look at their rosters and find out, how many people are they graduating in this year's class? What positions are they losing? So that's some background information you can do as a student athlete. And I know for baseball, if you're just chasing a certain level, you miss out on opportunities, because there are good programs at every level and there are some bad programs at every level. So if you're just chasing the number behind the D or whatever, there are some JUCO schools that'll whip some D1 schools and vice versa. So you need to find your fit. And do you want to play right away? Do you want to redshirt your first year? Like, where do you fit in, and what are you comfortable doing as a freshman?
Yeah, spot on. If you're a pitcher, does the softball coach let their pitchers hit? Those are all questions that, if that's important to you, you might want to find out. And you could do some of that background research. Go to the stats. See if the pitchers are in the offensive stats. That will tell you if their coaches let their pitchers hit. There's a lot of information that you guys have at your fingertips if you think outside the box and how to find that information. Right? I get kids asking me all the time, well, what's so-and-so's email? Dude, it's on Google. You Google
everything else.
You have it right at your fingertips. It's like some of these kids, man, we can get off this tangent, but I mean, soft skills is an issue in today's recruiting. These kids don't have that ability to problem solve or conflict resolution or figure things out. They want immediate feedback. They want you to give them the information right offhand. It's like, dude, go find it. I have it, but I want you to find it so that you figure things out on your own. But yeah, so that's first and foremost, guys, in the recruiting process. Step number one has to be identification and recognition. Once that coach knows who you are and you check off those checklists for them, yeah, I need that position, yeah, I need that grad year, yes, you have the metrics. Now they're going to start to evaluate. And this is where the coaches are going to be out at these tournaments, showcases and tournaments across the summer and the fall. But they're there with a list of kids they already know about, right? Like, Brandon, they're not just going to show up just randomly and just walk around and just like hope that they see something at these tournaments, right?
Yeah,
They're there with
budgets are not that big for you to waste time.
no way. Budgets aren't big enough. I don't have the time. I don't have the personnel to go do that. I've got to go to this tournament and I have these 10 kids I already know about from step one. I've already identified them. Right? Think about this, guys. A college coach is going to go out to, let's say, Colorado this summer. It's one of the largest summer tournaments for softball. And let's just keep it on the low end, coach. This tournament has 10 different venues, and each venue has 10 fields. So that's 100 fields, right? And there's 2 teams playing. So you got 200 teams. Each team has 10 kids. That's 2,000 kids at one time. If you think I'm going to be able to just like happen to just catch you having a diving catch or you hitting a home run, like that is not how, that's reactive. Oh, coaches are there, so they're going to see me. Not if they don't know who you are. Like, how does a coach know when and where you're playing if they don't know when and where you're playing?
Yeah.
Right? So that you want to be seen to be evaluated. You want that coach to already know who you are, right? If you've been emailing, and they can email you back, and maybe you've even had a phone call, you know that when ABC shows up at your game, who they're there to watch. It's not a secret because you've been communicating with them, right? So they're there to evaluate you, and they're actually there, and you and I know this, they're there to take that list from 10 and dwindle it down. I'm not there to add names. I'm there to take them off,
Yep.
right? So once I've seen you, I also want to see video. This is a big piece of what's going on in today's recruiting. I mean, video has always been important, but it's super important these days. It's having good video. I could pull up Facebook right now and just see some terrible video, or just video that doesn't make sense. Guys, if you're a pitcher, or for any position, put your important stuff up front. Like, put your sellable points up front, because if you're a pitcher and you show me you playing first and you hitting and then you pitching, I'm going to think that you're not a very good pitcher if you're not showing it to me up front. Right? Have sellable video. I'd rather you send no video than send bad video. It's crucial. I mean, coach, that's the first question I get is, coach, she looks good, she sounds good, what kind of video do you have? I want to see video.
Yeah. Video your game, because you said, they can't see every player at every field. Getting good video of your at-bats, getting good video of any live game situation is something you can send out. But not only that, if you're going to send out a video and you're a pitcher, clip it to a minute, throw your best pitches, see if you can get a radar gun in the video so we can verify your velocity. Don't just send me something that does me no purpose and I don't know any more information than I did before you send it.
Bingo. I mean, and not all coaches even, it doesn't even have to be game footage, y'all. I mean, this can literally be at lessons, at practice. I don't care if it's in the backyard and you and a bow net and a radar gun. I mean, coach is right. Like, metrics are a big piece of today's recruiting too. I think metrics, you're going to start to see a shift in coaches recruiting by numbers, which is a little subjective. Our sports are kind of objective up till now, but the metrics are a big piece of this. It's going to set some kids. There's going to be some outliers, but come on, if you're touching 68 as a pitcher, that's Power 5 level. If you're touching 59, that might not be Power 5 level. I'm not saying it's not D1, but it's definitely not Power 5 yet. So, I mean, going back to the video, though, yeah, I mean, we want video. We want, like you said, metrics in that video is great, but having video and video that shows growth. If you're a pitcher, I want to see a couple different angles of each pitch. But again, I think it's important that, I don't need to see a lot of, oh, my favorite is like a dad will send me some video and it's like a minute 47 of a 12 pitch at bat just to show me a double. It's like, just cut it down to 10 seconds. Yeah, clip it down to what's the most important piece that we're trying to, to get through. And then a lot of people want to put their stuff out on, YouTube. They have YouTube channels. Well, if a coach doesn't know who you are, I can promise you that they're not sitting on YouTube just randomly searching for a player that they don't know exists. YouTube is great. It's a great tool when that coach already knows who you are and why they're going to your channel, right? So it's not just having the video, it's what you do with that video. It's the targeted direction, you go with that video. Right? So we want to be seen to be evaluated. The coaches know who you are. They're out there watching, they're watching your video. Then we get into the third stage of recruiting. And this is where a lot of kids get lost in this mix, Coach, because it's comparison. I'm going to compare the 2 or 3 kids I have in that position, that I'm going to start to compare some things. And this is where you're going to go to camp as a recruit. Not a camp you're not going to go to a camp and be a camper. Those are 2 very different camp experiences. When you go to camp as a recruit, it's very different. We've had conversations. We've had phone calls. I've probably seen you play. I know who you are. I'm personally inviting you to camp. This is not the camp emails. This is not what I'm talking about, right? If you get a camp email, that is not an indication of recruitment. Let's put that out there. You'll know.
Make money.
Yes, I've done it. Right? Most camps are money makers. Let's say for every 50 kid I had at camp, I was legitimately looking at 5, and those 5 kids knew about it. They had already been through the first couple steps of the process for me. But that comparison stage, you're coming to camp so that I can see how you interact with my staff, with my players. I want to see how you interact with mom and dad, how mom and dad interact with you. Everything's being compared, right? Because the last step of this, guys, is the offer and the commitment. And everybody wants the last step, but we're not willing to go through things in order and be proactive. We want to just sign up for a random camp and just think that the coach is going to offer us. Or we're just going to send a couple videos here and there, a couple emails, and a coach is just going to happen to, to find me. These steps of the process are tried and true through every sport at every level. Let's not mistake Division I coaches recruit the same way as D3. It might happen a little bit later or a little bit earlier, depending on one or the other, right? So Division I's aren't recruiting any different. They still know, they have identified the kid, they've evaluated, they've compared, and then there's an offer if there is one. So I think that a lot of people think, D1 kids are just going to be found. I mean, that's not the case at all. I had a kid a couple years ago. She was out of Arizona. Dude, I saw one clip and knew that this was a third baseman who was ungodly. I mean, great defensive player. And I just knew, like, this kid's something special. Well, a coaching friend of mine, Division I, all the way in Delaware, needed a third baseman. She had no idea this kid existed. And all of a sudden, she went through those steps really quickly. I mean, she went from the coach not even knowing who she was to getting through that process. All because, I mean, really, sometimes recruiting also comes down to timing, like getting into it, talking to the right coach at the right time.
And I'll say, and piggyback on that when you send that email as a student athlete and you have a reference that can back that email up, whether it's a private instructor, a high school coach, a travel ball coach, like that goes a long way than anything else, because coaches look for that. They're going to talk to those coaches. They want to know about, your skill set. They want to know what they see every day when they're working with you. And as a private instructor myself, I send hit tracks information out all the time, whether it's exit velocity, average exit velocity, just line drive percentage. Like, can this hitter hit? What's their bat speed? Because if you can hit the ball 70 miles an hour, you've got a chance to play college softball.
That's right. No, I think you hit it right there as far as the credibility. I mean, college coaches have a small circle of people that they trust. That's why they don't answer every single email that comes through. Like, who is Susie Smith and why do I need to know who she is? Like, once somebody like you or myself puts that stamp of approval and says to this coach, yeah, this kid can play at your level. And for me, we're interviewing our kids. We're not that company that just takes on every kid. So our college coaches know that if I've put my name on this kid, that they're credible, that this kid is can be at that level. I'm not putting every single kid in front of Pat Murphy at Alabama. That's not happening. I don't put every kid in front of Brandon Elliott at Virginia Wesleyan, right? I know what kind of kids they like, and they know me from being a coach, what kind of kids I have. But you're right, dude. It starts with having a credible source. Now, you and I can lead these kids to the water, but we can't make them drink it, right? And that's where becoming interested. There's a lot of kids that love being recruited. They love that spotlight. They love all of that stuff, but they're not invested in that final process. They want the outcome, but they might not want to do all the steps that it takes to be in that process. Those steps, they could take time. Some of your baseball kids, I think 8th grade's way too early to be committing, but at the end of the day, who am I to tell you how fast you have to run your race? I've had kids that have committed in a sophomore year. I think it's a race at your own pace. And Brandon, you're not racing anybody. You have to stay in your lane and worry about what you've got going on with your recruitment. I think too many kids these days really get focused on what everybody else is doing and why is so-and-so getting recruited to there. Well, maybe that coach doesn't need a shortstop. Maybe they're looking for that lefty slapper outfielder. So don't worry about what other people are doing in their recruitment, because that's not for you to worry about. We can get excited for somebody else's success without it diminishing our own. And our recruitment will come in its own time. But you have to work that process. It's not like, oh, Coach Brandon's going to reach out to some coaches for me and I'm just going to get an offer. Like, once we do that, once you and I make that initial conversation or connection, it's up to the kids. It's up to the players to take the reign of that and move it forward.
Yep.
Right? Like, we're not here.
Conversations happen between the student athlete and the coaches. Like, now it's your ball.
Yeah, I mean, you and I, we're not here to give these kids fish every day, and then they only rely on us. I think we're in the business of teaching these kids to fish for themselves, and then they can eat for the rest of their lives, right? It's not, and a lot of this always goes back, for me, it's looking at it, and recruiting always goes back to the soft skills. I really think this generation has lost a sense of communicating. As connected as they are, Coach, they're often disconnected in having communications with coaches. I mean, like we talked about earlier, right? They don't know how to build that relationship one-on-one. They don't know how to, I told a kid the other day, it's like writing a pen pal and then never writing back. And the kid was like, I don't know what a pen pal is. Yeah. That doesn't even make sense anymore. But email's one of the easiest things. That's one of the questions I get most, is helping kids just write emails. But I'm not going to write it for them. Definitely not the case. But they've got to take the reins of this and run their own race, so to speak.
I've seen you post some stuff about showcase kind of do's and don'ts. Some of the funniest ones I've seen are sack bunting and tents. Why you got
to poke the bear? Yeah, that's the tent one is always something that's always going to come around, because there's always a new 14U group. There's always a new group of kids and families that don't know the etiquette of, showcase ball and tournament ball. If you're out there trying to be showcased, and you've got parents that are sitting behind the backstop, that's like the most perfect real estate for any coach. I mean, baseball, softball, that's the ideal spot. I can get radar, I can get time. That's the spot I want to see. And these parents will come and set up their, we call it tent city. You got tents, you got chairs, you got wagons, you got fans, you got generators, you got coolers, you got double-decker wagons, man, not just like
speakers,
everything. And they put it up right there, and then they want to argue with you and say, well, I paid for this. Well, yeah, but I don't understand that when you paid to be at a showcase, yet coaches can't see through all of that. So you do 14Us, and this really goes back, this is on the organization and coaches. If they're not educating you on, etiquette that's coming up, then there's a red flag for you. That's one of the most basic things is knowing where to sit. And then if your teams don't have roster sheets, information sheets, man, dude, I was out this fall, and I was absolutely shocked at the amount of teams that are at a showcase and they have no team information.
Yep.
What are we doing? What are we doing? How am I supposed to get a hold of the kid? How am I supposed to get a hold of the kid or the family? Or, I know a lot of travel coaches want coaches to go through them, but listen, travel coaches, I love them. I really do, but they're busy. I mean, they are moms and dads and husbands and wives, and their full-time job is not recruitment. Sometimes it takes days. I'm talking like days, if not weeks, for some coaches to answer me on certain things. So if they don't do that with me, I mean, college coaches, they don't have time to wait on you to get back, about a kid. Like, allow these kids to have, somebody. They don't need a gatekeeper in the mix. And a lot of travel coaches will try to limit, which schools are really talking to these kids, and there's an ego factor in it. Like, let these kids decide what's best for them. Everybody's fit is different. I don't care if you have D1 interest and D1 offers. Who's to say that a D3 somewhere isn't a perfect fit for that kid? So I think at the end of the day,
I don't know if the travel ball program you're playing for has your best interest in mind if they're worried about posting on their website what school you committed to that you're going to transfer from in 1 year because they didn't let you find your good fit or help you find the right fit.
Yeah, and help you. And some of them don't have the reach. I mean, some of them don't have the networks. They might have, 5 or 6 coaches, but what if those 5 or 6 coaches don't have a need for these kids? Then what? Right. So I think a lot of this education starts with the organizations and teams. So yeah, don't put tents up behind the backstop. Don't do that. You've got all this other space. Go somewhere else, right? And it's not about the tent. I don't want the shade. It ain't about that. It's about you're in prime real estate for coaches to, see your kids. That's what you're there to do. So let them do their job. And then you talked about sack bunting at showcases. I just don't get that one. I get a lot of flack on it, but dude, what are we doing what are we showcasing with a bunt? A sack bunt.
There's a big difference in bunting for a hit, showcasing the skill, and just pool play game. Let me move a runner to second base for no reason.
Dude, if they're not playing for anything and there's no trophy, then what's the point of sack bunting? I'd rather see a kid, make a decision to hit behind a runner or see what kind of, in your words, damage mode we can do. I think I could teach you how to bunt rather than teach you that instinct of what you're looking for in hitting behind a runner.
That's the key right there. I tell people all the time, if I've got to make a choice on an athlete who can hit the ball hard and can't bunt versus the athlete who can bunt and can't hit the ball hard, that's an easy decision. I can teach a kid to bunt, but that's the lowest skill on the totem pole for offensive prowess.
I mean, exactly. I mean, I'd rather see, again, the coaches they're limited, dude. I mean, we go out, I might only have an inning or two to see you because, again, remember that scenario of Colorado, those venues aren't close. A lot of those coaches are in their cars driving more miles than they're actually watching at a field. So if I've only got 2 innings to see you, you come up in damage mode opportunity and your coach has you sack bunt, I don't, that's frustrating for me. I can bring you to camp and you can bunt there for me. I want to see what you do kind of in that moment. So, I mean, and again, I mean, I now some people are going to say, well, if, to be able to get into certain tournaments or play at the certain fields, you've got to have certain run differentiation and you've got to show a resume of who you beat at a certain showcase. That's a whole other topic. Now we're talking about, okay, if I've got to do that, well, then I am going to score some runs and then I am looking to win. But the majority of the time, that's not the case. Man, let these kids hit.
Yeah, let them showcase their skill. That's what coaches want to see. Can they handle an at bat? What's their approach? How do they respond in two-strike situations? You want to see them basically take the handcuffs off and let them compete.
No doubt. Same thing. I want to see a pitcher in that situation. How does she work that batter? How does she work that at bat to get the most productive opportunity for her defense? I don't know. We could go on for hours on that one, but yeah, those are just a couple showcase rules. The big one for me though is just having the roster sheets for these kids. I mean, that's one of the most basic things is having the information for your players behind the backstop, man. I don't know what some of these coaches, I don't know what they're doing.
So can you tell our viewers a little bit about, what services you provide with NSR and, what NSR is all about, and if they're interested in, possibly reaching out and inquiring more, how do they go about that process?
No doubt. National Scouting Report has been around for 41 years. It's as old as I am, and it's been the longest. It's the oldest scouting organization in the country. We don't just do softball. We do all NCAA sports, including esports, and our newest one is bass fishing. Okay, so we do all NCAA sports, and for us, and National Scouting Report, we select the players and families that we work with. We are not open enrollment. You can't just go on our website and just sign up. I actually meet and review and qualify every kid and player that I work with. Because again, for me, as a former college coach, I want to make sure I'm working with, number one, I got to work with a family and kid of character. If you're a jerk, I don't care how good you are. I don't care how awesome your grades are. If you don't have great character and you're not a good person and you're that jerk of a teammate, or maybe I've got crazy mom, crazy dad, I don't want to work with that, right? So I've got to have good kids to start with. Then I want good academics, because that opens so many doors when I have a kid that has test scores that are playable, where I have kids that have test scores that open a lot of other opportunities. So I want good kids, good students, and then I want a good athlete. Obviously, the kid has to be able to play at the next level. So for me to start the process, it's usually me getting eyes directly on that kid, whether it's you send me your fall, summer, high school schedule. We do have scouts on the ground across the country. So if I have kids in Idaho, right? So if I can't make it out to Idaho, I've got another scout out there who will be able to kind of see my kids and whatnot. So we want to see the kids first. Typically that's either on the ground or families send me video. And that starts the process. I mean, I want to take a good look at the video, and then we meet with each family, and then we decide whether we want to offer that kid, that family to work with them or not. I'll send you that link. I've got a questionnaire. I've got a Scout Me form. If your viewers are interested, I can give you that link that goes right to our website to be evaluated.
Yeah, definitely. Send me that link, and I'll put it in the show notes when I make the post. For those of you who are watching, if you want to recap the show, it'll be posted. Well, it's live streaming now to YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, so it'll be available immediately for replay viewing on all of those platforms. I'll also put some show notes on the website, www.bmatthewsbaseball.com, so be on the lookout for all of those notes. If there's any last piece of advice you would say, like biggest piece of advice I could give you, and we'll let you take it out from there.
Okay. I think the biggest piece of advice, I think it has to be broke down into the two different grades. I want to give advice for seniors and juniors. I think that's important. If you're a senior or a junior who's uncommitted, your options are closing. And literally day by day, the more you wait, or the reactiveness that you have, you're going to miss out on opportunities. Start making moves. Get with somebody that you trust, who's in your circle, in your corner, who has your best interest in mind, who's guiding you to the right schools that still are open for, there are schools out there, coach, that still need 22s, guys. So there are still opportunities. And now we're going to have to not only, for juniors and seniors, guys, be open-minded. There's going to be opportunities. We got to be looking at JUCO. We got to be looking at NAI. We got to be looking at D2. So instead of narrowing it down and being picky, we've got to be a little bit broader. Time's of the essence for that group. The clock is ticking, and I'm telling you, there are opportunities that were open last week that aren't open this week. And the kids who are proactive and make moves on those are the kids who are getting those commitments. And ask tough questions. Coach, if you're a junior or senior going to camp and you're not asking the coach this question after camp, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Ask them, Coach, now that you've seen me play, do I fit somebody that would be a part of your program? Ask a tough question. Don't allow a coach to tell you, oh, send me your schedule. That's one of the worst answers I've ever, I know what that answer means as a coach. Yeah. If I'm interested in you, you're going to know. I'm going to tell you to call me or I'm calling you. There's the most generic answer is send me your schedule and come to camp. Okay, so ask tough questions of these coaches. Write an email, say, Coach, are you still looking for a middle infielder in the 22 class? Some of these kids just won't ask the question because they're scared of the answer. But I want to know so I don't keep fishing in that dang pond when I'm not going to have a bite over. Exactly. So juniors and seniors, get active immediately, okay? If you're a freshman or a sophomore or younger, you have to have a game plan. And I'm talking about a smart game plan of taking some tests early, take an ACT or an SAT early, take it in your freshman year. There's no minimum requirement, just so you have a baseline, just so you have experience with that test and you know what it's like, but mainly for that baseline. Where is my ACT or SAT score starting? So then I have time over the next couple years to improve in the areas that I need to on those tests, right? So have a plan, have a plan early. It goes back to having that race at your own pace. Those freshmen and sophomore, they have a little bit more of a marathon. They've got some time, but they've got to get into that race to know kind of where they're fitting. Because if you are of a higher caliber, coaches need to know about you now, right? And every level needs to know about you, because there's Division IIIs and NAIs and JUCOs can talk to kids a lot sooner than the D2s and the Division I. So race at your own pace. Enjoy the process. Man, Coach, I want these kids to have fun in this process. It's work. It's a grind, no doubt. But they should have fun. It shouldn't be a job. And that's where earlier I talked about just getting their toes wet. I'm not throwing my freshmen and sophomore and eighth graders, I'm not throwing them into the deep end yet. We're doing things on a timeline, right? So enjoy the process, play other sports. I'm a big believer in multi-sport athletes. I don't think that you should have to just solely focus on one, really, until your plate becomes too full. Man, get involved. Get involved with activities that aren't other sports. I have kids that show livestock. I have kids that are in choir and band, philanthropy, community service, church youth group. I mean, be a kid. This is supposed to be fun. And dude, It's a lot of fun when you know those kids are fishing in the right pond to start with. It's a lot of fun in that, and when you could see the things just happening and one step leading to the next. But if you continue to stay in your own way, right, and do what you want to do, some of these kids and families are going to run that hamster wheel and keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result, right? Like, there's a lot of other things we didn't get into tonight, but there's a lot of money grabs out there. There's a lot of things that people think they should do that they don't need to do, right? You don't need to pay to be an all-star, guys. You don't need to pay to be
the good stuff.
You don't need to pay to be an All-American. You don't need to pay to have a ranking. None of that stuff matters. I have never had a coach call me and say, who are your all-stars, all-Americans? Who's your ranked kids? That's not a thing. That's an ego-driven thing. That's not even a thing in recruiting. There's a lot of awesome experiences, that have no benefit to your recruitment whatsoever. You know, a lot of people are going to say, well, it's not always about recruiting. Well, at some point it should be. Sophomore, junior year, it's got to be about recruitment. We're not going to camps that, you know, is just a really expensive autograph. Make sure you're starting to do things that have an ROI in your recruitment, right? So that's kind of the breakdown as far as advice. I think juniors and seniors, you guys got to get moving. Sophomores, freshmen, and younger, start to have a plan so that you're not sitting at a junior or senior with no options on the board.
Well, if you guys don't have any questions in the comments, I think Coach hit all of the major points, because I know the recruiting can be an overwhelming thing from the outside in when you have no experience and you're trying to navigate this process. But as I expected, you know, Coach is the expert, so I knew bringing her on would be beneficial for my audience especially. Be sure to check out the show notes, and if you want to reach out to Coach, reach out to her, and she can point you in the right direction with somebody who may be in your area that you can work with.
Absolutely. Coach, thank you so much for having me tonight. Again, I know we didn't cover everything in an hour. It's really impossible, but I just really appreciate you giving me a new audience to reach, and just for believing in what I do.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Tremendous respect for you and what you do. I really appreciate you taking your personal time on a weeknight to give back to our community here in, you know, small town Eastern North Carolina, and all of our viewers that are watching. Really appreciate it.
No doubt. Anything I can do for any of you guys, just let me know. You can reach me. I'll get Coach to my email and my cell. However you got to reach me, reach out if you want to get evaluated for me or one of our other scouts.
All right. Thank you, Coach. Take care.
All right. You too.